Despite rumors to the contrary, it appears that Acolyte Season 2 has now been canceled. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and I am here to tell you of the semi-joyous news for those of us who were forced to watch The Acolyte every Tuesday evening on the WDW Pro channel for the Acolyte After Party. Well, there's some solace there for that subset of the fan base. Report out of That Park Place, Leslye Headland's The Acolyte Cancelled after abysmal final ratings. This by John F. Trent. Look at that right there. That is the showrunner of The Acolyte and the writer and I believe the director of several episodes, Miss Leslye Headland. A new report details that Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company canceled Leslye Headland's The Acolyte series in the wake of Nielsen reporting the season finale had abysmal viewership numbers. Look at it right there. She is pointing at you. Deadline's Nellie Andreeva reports the story of The Acolyte will not continue, with Lucasfilm opting not to proceed with a second season of the Star Wars offshoot starring Amandla Stenberg, sources tell Deadline. Fascinating. I've seen other articles that say, well, there wasn't a contract in place. Season 2 wasn't greenlit. So therefore, it's not really canceled. It's just not renewed, which potato, whatever. This report comes in the wake of Nielsen releasing its data for the week of the Acolyte series finale. The show only managed to garner 335 million minutes watched. That was less than the 2-episode premiere, which brought in 480 million minutes watched. That's not very many. I have to point that out. And that is with the entire series available. So the potential here for more people watching is a lot higher with 8 episodes in existence. Of course, those episodes varied in length. When the final episode came around, well, I'll save that till the end. Nielsen's viewership numbers reflect a significant decline in reviews per episode of the series on IMDb. The first episode received 26,000 reviews, while the finale received only 11,000. Not only did the show receive poor viewership, but those who did watch it did not like it. The show has a 4.1 out of 10, with the plurality, 45.8% of all reviews being a 1 out of 10. But that's review bombing, right? That's what we're told to believe, that anyone who reviewed this out of spite for reasons other than the quality of the show. I can tell you as a person who watched the show, I'm going to be very generous and say that the quality was mixed at times or inconsistent. There were a couple of moments here or there. I want to say there was an episode with a lightsaber fight that had a lot of really hammy dialogue and a lot of nonsense going on that I found very amusing, but I wouldn't say it was a quality show. The report also confirms a rumor by our good friend WDW Pro, who indicated that Lucasfilm would not be moving forward with the show at the end of July. That was the report at the end of July, not that at the end of the July they wouldn't be moving forward. Here we have a video from Pro. Let's just watch that right now. I'm just kidding. You can go check that out. He said at the time, said sources tell me that Leslye Headland does not, as of right now, have a contract for a season 2 of The Acolyte. Oh, look at that. There's the accuracy for you. Even the haters can't disagree with that one. Said source tells me that following the finale of season 1 and the results that may have been coming in weeks ahead, this decision may have been coming in the weeks ahead of the finale. There are no current plans to develop a season 2. Pro added that could change. Kathleen Kennedy can always make the decision as long as she has a contract, which we believe she has a contract up until October of this year. And it may be continued past that, but that's when the current contract would end. But Kathleen Kennedy could go ahead and approve that. But as of right now, we are told there are no plans, no movements. There is nothing in development for a season 2 of The Acolyte. And he concluded, my source tells me that everything in season 1 indicates they did plan on doing a season 2, especially with the way the show ends. Yes, it very much ends in the way that it would be continued at some point. Maybe they will release a novel that has limited viewership. As of right now, that continuation of the story seems to be on indefinite hold, indefinite pause. Look at that. Can these two lovebirds ever be together? Who knows? The show performed extremely poorly compared to previous Disney Star Wars series, as noted by X-User. Now it's known the show's finale performed worse than every single live-action Star Wars show released on Disney Plus before it, including Ahsoka, Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the Book of Boba Fett and The Mandalorian. It's worth noting that Tamira Morrison just came out and said that Boba Fett would not be appearing in The Mandalorian and Grogu because the character was not popular enough on Disney Plus. That's the kind of data-driven reasoning that I think is probably why Disney struggles so much. You have to have a vision for a character and put them in there. Of course, having Boba Fett appear in the Mandalorian and Grogu movie actually makes sense, especially if it's the Boba Fett of season 2 of The Mandalorian. You know, despite the fact that Tamira Morrison even said that he was Boba Fett, or that people called him Boba Fett. I think it was the costume, but whatever, to each his own. Ahsoka's finale back in October of 2023 saw its viewership hit 575 million minutes watched. The Acolyte's finale viewership is 41% less than Ahsoka's. Similarly, Andor's finale brought in 674 minutes watched. The Acolyte's viewership is over 50% less than Andor. And as many people say, Andor is the best. It's the most well-written of all of the Star Wars shows and is not considered to be, well watched. The continuous comment is, I hear that Andor is good. And it sounds like The Acolyte, well, I haven't heard many people saying that The Acolyte is good. That is purely anecdotal, and not just in my circle of online friends who are probably predisposed to dislike it, but also out in the real world when people talk about The Acolyte. This is the first time where someone has said, oh, you're talking about Star Wars? Oh, The Acolyte? Yeah, the only reason I even finished that one was to hate watch it. And that is multiple incidents of people telling me they did not enjoy the show and only watched it to hate watch it. It gets even worse when you compare it to Obi-Wan Kenobi and Book of Boba Fett. Obi-Wan Kenobi had 860 million minutes watched for the week of its finale. Acolyte's viewership is over 60% less than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Similar, Book of Boba Fett viewership had 885 million minutes watched. The Acolyte was over 62% less than the Book of Boba Fett. Mandalorian Season 3 had 1.012 billion minutes watched. Acolyte performed 66% worse than that. The thing that I will point out here is that Disney Plus appears to be the albatross on the neck of almost all of its franchises at this point. I think that Star Wars might actually be more popular if they just didn't release anything. But when you look at the current quality of the shows, it reminds people of that current quality. That's what's right in front of people's faces here. When you have something like The Mandalorian Season 3, if you were allowed to build up anticipation for Mandalorian Season 4, that's not happening. According to reports here from That Park Place, Mandalorian Season 4 was retooled into The Mandalorian and Grogu. But if Mandalorian Season 4 were allowed to happen, it would probably get a lot of anticipation and people would want to see it as long as it were properly advertised. But in this case, you have shows like Ahsoka, and you have shows like The Acolyte all coming out in between, diminishing those returns for Disney. The idea that you could just throw anything into a brand and it will reward you is ridiculous, especially when a show like this probably costs $180 million to $200 million. We don't have final figures on how much this show costs, but $180 million is what has made it into the trades. We don't know if that's 180 million pounds or $180 million. Either way, they spent a lot of money on this show for not much return on their investment. It is likely, John Trent continues, that showrunner Leslye Headland knew the show had atrocious viewership, as she had resorted to begging viewers to launch social media campaigns in an attempt to convince Lucasfilm and the Walt Disney Company to greenlight a second season. That is tragic. She was asked by Collider's Maggie Lovett. Shifting gears, one of the most popular questions that I got to ask you from Twitter was, what do fans need to do to ensure that we get a season 2? Headland responded, truly, any online support and love you can send the show. It's a little tricky because of the way the internet works, but if you enjoy the show and you want to see more of the story, any support that you can give the show on social media platforms would be super helpful. She continued, sending love to the cast too. They've seen what Hayden Christensen went through. He's getting the love now, but give the love now if you enjoy the performances. Even if you were kind of like whatever on the show, if you enjoy the performances, get on their social media, let them know you love them or that you support them or that the performances were great. Whew. The only person I would say that to is probably Saul, but they really ruined that character by the end of the show. A lot of young actors and a lot of performances here. I just have to say, I'm not sad to see this show go the way of the dodo here. The Acolyte season 2 should never happen. And the only reason that it should happen is if Disney is in the idea that they need to have something in the brand at all times. It's probably better, based on the reasons that you and I just talked about here, it's probably better that it go away and that Star Wars be allowed to rest for a little while. It's done now. You have successfully ended this franchise. Let things just simmer for a little while on the back burner, or let people miss you for a little while. I do know that Andor season 2 is coming up and Skeleton Crew is coming up. I've theorized that it might be better for Skeleton Crew if they just rebranded that as Captain EO and removed all the references to Star Wars, that might actually stand better on its own 2 feet if you didn't have constant references to Star Wars in it. So the question that I want to ask our audience is, were you looking forward to Acolyte Season 2 in any form, whether it be watching the show, whether it be watching us watch the show, or, well, just the inevitable decline and the draining of Disney's bank accounts for no reason whatsoever? That being said, like this video if you like this video, and consider subscribing to That Park Plays for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Plays News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.